The one that we're talking about is him telling the world that the world is number one by using the middle finger to say uno.
That's right. Or the old Johnson finger, as we like to say.
Well, yeah, the Tyler Johnson
office.
Uno finger.
Don't call the hammer.
Call the Johnson.
The Johnson.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!
Hello, everybody. It's time for more Law Lite. Brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtree at fwhlegal.com. Today, PJ and I are situated in the library studio at 530 Frederica Street in the high rise, but
white
yet
brick edifice.
Oh, slightly elevated.
I thought you paused because you wanted me to jump in.
Brick edifice. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Well,
good.
We got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
We got a lot to talk about today. The first thing that we need to get to is that I am sitting here in the studio looking at you wearing earphones, and my little ears have no earphones on them. And yet you told us in the last podcast, in our last episode, you said, okay, we'll get you some earphones. I haven't had any earphones on since then. I haven't been offered a fitting for earphones. I don't have any. And yet you're sitting there with your nice noise canceling Bose headphones. I think I even gave you
I was
those.
getting ready to say, I'm pretty sure these are yours.
Those are a gift from me. And yet I struggle through each episode having to listen to all the ambient sound while you have the world locked out and you hear it nice and crisp. They are so sensitive that you can hear even the microphones through those earphones. When the air conditioner kicks on, it just kind of goes shh, like that.
It's not even that subtle. It's pretty obvious that it kicks on.
Well, let me tell you something. This will be the last episode that I do without earphones.
We can do that. I just need the company credit card.
I knew it was going to come around to that. Okay. All right. Anyway, beyond that, we have several things to talk about. What about Hawaii?
What about Hawaii?
Well, the rumor is...
Who started this rumor?
The rumor is that a light promise... No, a...
Loose promise.
A loose
Hawaiian promise.
A loose Hawaiian promise has been made that by the weekend.
Well, by the end of the weekend.
By the end of the weekend. So Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. By that point in time, we should have a Hawaiian listener.
Yes.
A Hawaiian download.
Yep.
Really?
I'm almost positive I can make that happen.
Wow. And so then we got Alaska.
Yeah. It'd be coming from Maui too.
Oh wow. Okay. So we're going to go right to the Big Island. Okay. Well, that is encouraging to know that we are going to maybe check that box off, PJ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we just need to take that trip to Alaska.
That's right, because that was our other look. He just walked by with a bunch of snacks, and Tyler's
he's telling us we're number one.
Oh, and speaking of that,
why are you talking about the chips that?
No, speaking of
Vincent was taking.
Tyler walked by. For those that don't know, our high-rise white brick edifice has in our library studio the one wall is glass, and so people go by here and they make hideous faces at us and gestures, and we just received a middle finger gesture from Tyler Johnson.
That's right.
Yes.
I still take that as we're number one.
No, well, okay, so then how do you take it this week? This week I was doing some research for some depositions that I'm going to be taking in a medical malpractice case. And I, as a part of what I do, I research a person's social media. Right?
Right.
And you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, I had 100%.
Yes. And so the person I'm going to be deposing is a nurse. And this nurse, he graduated from nursing school not so long ago.
Right.
And had a photographer show up at his school when he was wearing his black graduation gown, right?
Right.
With a nice yellow sash that said nursing down it. Yeah. He had a stethoscope around his neck. He's sitting on some stone apparatus looking stone like wall or something with some landscaping in the background that looked rather nice. Yeah. It kind of gives you the idea of that he was at some institute of higher learning. It's kind of the feeling you got, right?
Or he graduated from a nursing program in a park somewhere.
Could be. Or the photographer took him to somewhere. Anyway, we're getting off track here. So the guy, right, he does a series of poses, serious smiles, leg propped up, leg down, all the kind of
Now,
things.
is this series of poses also on his... You said you got these from his Facebook page,
I did.
Correct?
There was 3 or 4 others.
Oh, okay. See, I've only seen the one.
Right. And the one that we're talking about...
The one
is him telling the world that the world is number one by using the middle finger to say uno.
That's right. Or the old Johnson finger, as we like to say.
Well, yeah, the Tyler Johnson
office.
Uno finger.
Don't call the hammer.
Call the Johnson.
The Johnson.
Anyhow, I am kind of chomping at the bit to be able to use such a photo in a deposition.
Right.
Say, hey, you graduated. Is this you at graduation from nursing school? And he's basically giving the world the
now he is not
finger.
Our client, correct?
No, he's the person I'm going to be deposing against.
He's on the opposition.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that was a little interesting research I got. I brought it down to you and I said, hey, take a look at this. You why did it catch you so funny?
Because it's funny. I think it's, well, let me ask you this. And I'm pretty sure I already know the answer. But obviously in my mind, that was just him, just having kind of a fun moment. Because I think we all, and this line of questioning may end with you going, whose side are you on anyways? But, it was just a moment. I think we all have, I have photos at home in photo albums, not necessarily on Facebook. I might have one on Facebook somewhere. I've flicked off the person taking a picture before.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yeah.
Is it on your Facebook?
I don't know, but I know I have several I have several photos and photo albums at home where, actually I probably have a slew of photos where I was flicking off the camera, just joking around. It's not something I do on a normal everyday basis, but it's just, a moment of goofiness that was caught.
Yeah. And maybe so, and I may not even use it.
Right.
But
when you found that, were you like, man, this is gold?
No.
Because I think to some degree, and I kind of get the idea, because it's like when you think of a profession such as nursing or, just the medical field in general, it's a very serious field.
Right. I don't know. I don't, he is probably F it. I'm done with school.
Right.
You're at the end of, for him, he got his bachelor's of science in nursing, a 4-year program. And, so, he's probably finished his exams, knows that he's passed the nursing exam, and he's like, F it to school. I don't ever have to do this again. Right.
Right.
But it's just, you have to remember that you are kind of walking through the gates from academia, okay, into professional, and you don't want to be escorted into your professional career with your future employers. Here's the thing. Do I know what he probably meant by that? Yes. I'm an employer and I need nurses and I need 6 nurses and I've interviewed 12 nurses and I'm making cuts, right?
Right.
It makes me have something or a reason to cut you, or to not give you the job, right?
Right.
Because
you'll cut a nurse.
Yeah, I'll cut a nurse. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? When it comes down to, dividing the fine hairs here, of who to pick and who to keep, you already have this, oh, why did he do that? That was poor choice.
Well, I also, and I don't know anything about the case, and obviously we aren't going to talk about the details. I think if you can have moments of, is that a lack of shows a lack of professionalism to some degree? Yes. But I can only assume that the reason he's being deposed is because something transpired that has put him in that seat. So I say that to say this. If you can do things like that, like flick off the camera or be unprofessional at times, but I think the goal is to be good at what you do, good enough to where it's never an issue. Because the reality is had he not done whatever it is that he had done, that picture would never have been a problem.
Wouldn't have been an issue.
Right.
That's right.
But what it does is it becomes evidence because it just kind of falls in line with whatever else, Mm-hmm. So it's like,
that's a good point. Good point.
And see, that's like the culture we have today is like, there's, like cancel culture. I'm very anti-cancel culture unless the person being canceled really is a bad person.
Right.
Because like for me, I'll use comedy as an example. I have made a ton of inappropriate jokes in my lifetime.
No.
No what?
You haven't.
But I'll say I've made some on this podcast. However, at the end of the day, I've never killed anyone or raped anyone, or I'm not a neo-Nazi, so like I support diversity and I love women's rights and I'm, so I never plan on doing anything that would warrant someone going back and going, oh, look, this shows a history of problems
or just bad choices.
Or even bad.
Right.
So to me, a lot of those things that I've said, they're just jokes. There's nothing substantial behind them.
Right.
But a lot of people seem to be going after jokes and comedy as if that's exactly who that person is. So once again, though, whatever this guy did, obviously you're using this because it just shows a trail of a lack of professionalism, which has put him in the position he's in now.
Right. I will say this. I've done a number of background checks on people, both criminal background, social media background, looking at places where we go to find, and I come up empty. And it is when you are going to depose somebody that is adverse to you, it's like, oh man, I don't have any, but when you find that stuff and it can fuel so it's just like, why give them a reason why give them any type of fuel for their fire? Why give them anything else to talk to you? Because if you're it's just a cleaner and you don't have to worry, so
right.
I just try to always think about what can come back to haunt you.
Now, the other thing too is this, you also depose people. Now, I know that you also talk to other people. Like there's the very specific person that's in the Lite, right? And then there's the people that work with them.
Right.
Right. Now, do you make the decisions as to whether or not you should talk to those people, or do they offer up that person?
Oh, yeah. So what happens is we go through a process called written discovery. And we write questions like, for example, let's say that something bad happened here at work, okay? And I was trying to find out who all could have possibly been a witness, who could have seen it, who could have heard it. So one of the things that I would do is I would send a request, an interrogatory. It's just a written question that says, please identify first and last name, all individuals who were present at Foreman Watson Holtree on January the 13th, 2020, when the subject incident took place. Now, what they would have the obligation to answer the names, first and last names of everybody that was here on the day of the quote incident, whatever, the make-believe incident was.
Right.
The next question that I could write in written discovery would be, for each person you identify in interrogatory number blank above, please give a brief factual summation of what he or she has knowledge of. Okay. So they may say, well, Shannon sits across the hall from where the incident occurred. She may have heard something. Okay.
Right.
So then I can take Shannon's deposition and say, okay, you've been identified as somebody that has knowledge. Did you see the incident? No, I didn't see the incident. Well, did you hear it? Oh, yeah, I heard it. Tell me what you heard, And then there's some things that you can ask. Well, did anybody ever train you about these types of things? What kind of training did you have when you came? You can get into that kind of stuff. So, you can be, how you always tell your kids in the wrong place at the wrong time, even though they may not be the perpetrator. Oh, yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
guilty by association.
Or just the fact that now you're involved in the mess. You may not be guilty, but now you're a person that's being questioned about what, and that can have a lot of repercussions because, in that little scenario that we just gave, Shannon wants to keep her job here, right? And so she's afraid, well, if I say something that could lead to liability for somebody, maybe I'll lose my job. Or that person, even if she doesn't lose her job, the person that ends up kind of taking, the head rolling here comes and says to, bullies Shannon and says, how could you ever do that? I'll make sure that, your life's, so
right.
It's just a lot of times that's what happens in these situations and how it wears out. Again, all this starts from what we're discussing. A guy makes a bad choice and right. gets flips off in a photograph, whoever, and it's on his social media. And it's definitely at the time that he's graduating from nursing school and starting
right.
his career. So
is it something where you're like, you ask a series of questions and then you feel as if, okay, maybe this guy is not being as forward or honest or, or he's talking about professionalism and that kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, well, speaking of professionalism, what about this?
Well,
how am I supposed to believe you if this is the kind of thing you're putting out there for yourself?
I use stuff like that for that, just to kind of, that's called impeachment. Like if they're kind of going, so no, I would never, right. Or if, like you said, you could say, is professionalism important in nursing? Is a respect for the institution important in nursing? Is respect for the process important in nursing? Yeah. Well, then why would you do this? Okay. So you're kind of backing down. Another way of using it, though, is to kind of set the tone early. A lot of times I will pop somebody with this early in a deposition to let them know I've done my homework. Mm-hmm. And then you probably get a lot more honest answers the whole way through because they're like, crap, this guy's looked at everything about me. Okay. So a lot of times I will do the way that could possibly come up in this deposition would be, let's talk a little bit about your education. Yes, sir. When did you graduate high school? 2014. And from there, where did you next go to school? Well, I attended Western Kentucky University. Okay, well, what years were you at Western? What were your studies? What year did you graduate? I graduated in such as. Is that when you graduated nursing school? Yeah. Is this a photograph of you in or around the time of your graduation?
Yeah. Is this when you graduated as number one in your class?
Yeah, there you go. And So if I put myself in that person's shoes, so far I've been answering, and then all of a sudden I look and I'm like, this guy's been on my Facebook page. this guy's looked into my.
All right.
Then all of a sudden I'm like, okay.
That's when they start to sweat.
I can't lie to this guy. I can't stretch the truth with this guy. He already knows. So it kind of, you can use it to set the tone. That picture probably will never, ever reach the jury. Okay. But it can be used in a deposition to set tone or to, so that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. Then he's thinking, I really hope he didn't find when I did blackface.
Yeah, right. All kinds of stuff's going through his mind. What did I delete? What did I not delete? Okay. We have a big, all right, here we go.
A breaking news story.
Yes. Yesterday, you and I received an email from one of the attorneys here in the firm, right?
Yep.
No, it was a text.
A text message.
It was a text message, right. And that text message was interesting because it had a news story from up in Ohio, right? And the reason you and I received the text was because we had discussed the whole idea of this horse dewormer called ivermectin. We discussed that on our last podcast. You recall?
Oh, I absolutely recall that.
Right. And we were talking about how we thought that it was these people who are willing to take ivermectin, a horse dewormer, as opposed to getting vaccinated, and that it was kind of, and then, you know, a couple of days after that, one of Kentucky's representatives, Rand Paul, made a big thing about ivermectin, and I thought, okay, maybe but then PJ, we get this headline, okay, and the headline says Butler County judge orders doctors. Now, remember, in our last podcast, we talked about an order having the effect of law, right?
Absolutely.
Orders doctors to treat a COVID-19 patient with ivermectin, okay?
Ivermectin.
Now, this happened up in Butler County in Ohio, not Butler County, Kentucky. When I first read it, I thought Butler County, Kentucky. That's right. Down
Well,
the
we're
road.
too smart for this.
Yes, that's right. And we know all about horses. In Kentucky.
We're not going to take horse medicine.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, the Butler County.
Well, maybe a horse tranquilizer, but that's different.
I've got a story about that, and I'll tell it here in just a minute.
Horse tranquilizer?
Yes, that's a great segue into something I was going to tell you. Butler County Common Pleas judge up in Ohio ordered the doctors at Westchester Hospital to treat a COVID-19 patient with ivermectin, a drug commonly used as a livestock dewormer, just like you said it was.
Real quick, what is a common pleas judge?
Well, I don't know what a common plea, so it's probably the equivalent of either our district court or our circuit court here in Kentucky. It's a state court.
Right.
It's not a federal court. And it's, you know, you can have, there's different levels. There's, in Kentucky, we have a district court, a circuit court, then the Court of Appeals, then the Supreme Court. So I would say it's in those lower two realms. It's like you have common pleas at maybe your district court. You know, I don't know.
Gotcha.
All right. It's a good question. So anyway, this judge, Judge Gregory Howard is his name, and he wrote that the doctors who are treating, and this kind of struck home, notice this man's age. It's the same as mine. Okay.
Yep.
And you know what else I thought was interesting was, I guess it's a matter of public record once it gets into the court, but then it's like, where's this guy's HIPAA rights? I mean, this is like getting plastered all over the news, his name, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So Judge Gregory Howard wrote that the doctors that were treating 51-year-old Jeffrey Smith, all right, in quotes, are you ready for the quotes? Shall immediately administer ivermectin to Smith. And then it says, according to the court documents, that's exactly what the court ordered, right? Smith is now to receive 30 milligrams of the drug for 3 weeks. All right. So one may say, well, how in the world did this ever get to a court to do? Well, it's answered in the article. The case was brought to the court by Smith's wife. So Jeffrey Smith's wife, who is also his guardian, her name's Julie, after Smith was hospitalized with COVID-19 and was placed on a ventilator in Westchester Hospital. Okay, so we've got this guy on event.
Yep.
All right. In Westchester, Ohio, he after he was on the ventilator for 19 days, his wife reached out to Fred Wogschel and asked about this ivermectin to treat COVID-19. Wogschel prescribed 30 milligrams of ivermectin to Smith, but the hospital staff said, I don't care what he prescribes. We're not giving it to him.
Right.
All right. And so they refuse. They straight up say, no, we're not doing it. So you have a doctor who's ordering the use of a livestock dewormer. Okay. And the hospital says, sorry, I'm not going to do what the doctor says. All right.
Yeah.
Now, therein is the conflict.
Which sounds like common sense to me, but whatever.
Yes, that's right. Ivermectin has grown in popularity. We're going to skip that. Taking large doses of the drug is dangerous and can cause serious harm, according to the FDA documents that made it into the court. Okay?
Right.
The FDA has approved the drug to be used in patients with intestinal strongyloidiasis, and onchocerciasis, whatever that is.
Sounds right.
Two conditions caused by parasitic worms. Okay, so if you go to the hospital with parasitic worms, I guess there's this off-label opportunity to get ivermectin, which makes sense.
It says as well as head lice too.
Worms. Okay. However, the administration has never approved the drug as a treatment for COVID-19, which is a viral disease.
Right.
Big difference.
Now, here's the thing. To me, that this portion right here is key.
Exactly.
To the whole thing.
Okay, so we know the medicine will work on worms in horses and cows and pigs.
Parasites.
But we're talking about an airborne virus.
Two completely
totally different things. All right, let's continue. Animal drugs are often highly concentrated because they are used for large animals like horses and cows, which can weigh a lot more than we do, say a ton or more. Okay.
All right.
The FDA writes in their documents, such high doses can be highly toxic to humans. Okay, so then we have the article, well-written article, by the way, here.
Right.
Barrett Brunsman with the Cincinnati Children's Hospital said that the Cincinnati Drug and Poison Information Center at the hospital has received about 5 phone calls since April related to COVID-19 and ivermectin. Dr. Steve Fagans, the chief clinical officer with the Mercy Health, called the decision to prescribe ivermectin a tough risk to benefit ratio. Okay. Anything we give in a hospital, you have to know that it has been pharmacy vetted and approved, and that the benefit exceeds the harm. But I could tell you, if something works and is approved and authorized, we will do it. I absolutely understand desperation when your loved one is in a hospital and they've done everything they can, and you hear about something like this, you want to use it, he said. And that's the end of the article.
Right.
Okay. Now, we don't know. That article was yesterday. That's when the order came out. We don't know if it's been given. I'm sure it has if the court ordered it.
Right. At this point.
And now what the result's going to be. So one thing we have to do, PJ, I always say this, but we have to. I'm going to, right now, since that came out yesterday, I'm going to do a Google search and I'm going to put ivermectin, all right, patient in West. Just see if there's an update on this, right?
Right. Well, while you're doing that, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
So the wife goes to the doctor, right? The wife says, I want this done to try to save my husband.
Right.
The doctor then says, okay. Tells the hospital says no. Then a judge gets involved and says, do it. Now, this guy takes this medicine, this horse and cow dewormer, and he dies. Who is liable for this? Because the wife initially said do it. Then the doctor said do it, but then had to go to a judge who said do it. Who's really at fault? Because in it seems in the world we live in today, that wife is desperate to save her husband, and I understand that. But the problem is, the second her husband dies, she's going to want to sue somebody.
Or could somebody come to her, go and say, you killed your husband?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the most recent is that he was given it. He's alive. He was given one dose of the 30 milligrams, and it says this is in that he's alive, but they've declined to share any details of his medical condition, citing the family's privacy. Oh, now privacy comes into the picture.
Right. That tells me he got violently sick. And now they're like,
well,
we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. So we may never know. I mean, it'll get reported. If the guy dies, it'll get reported.
For sure.
But you've raised a good question. Now, I will say that the judge who makes that decision, if he goes on to die, will be protected by immunity. Okay.
Right.
And so, unless the judge does something terribly careless, he's going to say, look, there was medical evidence that it could work. I had a doctor ordering it. And so, she's desperate. He's on day 19, but still he's going to be cloaked with immunity. All right. So the issue is, you're right. Is there a possible responsibility for it if he goes ahead and passes away after he gets a couple doses of this?
Yeah.
Is you're going to say, well, you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have, you should have known better. I think that'd be a really tough case based on how she is the one that took the action to court. Okay.
Right.
So maybe she's the one that ends up feeling guilty or feeling guilty,
absolutely.
even if there's no, hey, all of a sudden now.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. She's using her husband as a guinea pig for the rest of the country.
Yes,
is what
absolutely.
she's doing.
Sure.
And once again, though, she's doing what she thinks is best, but only based out of fear of losing her husband, which I get.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I love that this came up like almost immediately after we discussed it last week. I thought it was like some obscure thing you'd found, but I was reading in that one just now, the newest article about this is that, I mean, in Mississippi, there's been an issue, go to the courts with it. I mean, so I think it's picking up steam, and it's going to continue until somebody has a horrible reaction to it.
Which is inevitable because that happens with medicine. But that's what I was getting ready to say. It's obviously already happened because the FDA and the CDC are saying, don't do it.
Don't do it. Right.
I would be interested because they're giving him 30 milligrams, right?
Right.
Which, I know people who are on antidepressants that are close to 100 milligrams.
Right.
So what they don't tell you is they say they give animals larger doses because they weigh up to a ton more, which makes sense. But what I would be interested in knowing is how many milligrams do you give a cow? Do you give a cow 900 milligrams?
I don't know.
And the human is getting 30?
But if it's never been dosed for humans, then 30 to a human
at least
that
not
weighs
safely.
Yeah, so a human that weighs, well, it has been dosed to humans, hasn't it? Didn't it say?
Well, yeah, because there's two different parasites that it is used for. But here's the thing. So I was reading another article earlier that was, I don't remember. I can't remember if it was like Washington Post or whatever, but it was about the medicine. I keep saying ivermectin for some reason, but I think you're mectin because if you look at the way it's spelled. Anyway, so ivermectin, he's not flicking us off now.
No, he has a client with him.
That goes into that professionalism we were talking about earlier. See how that comes full circle?
It does.
But yeah, so I was reading that with ivermectin, that the big issue is, and the reason it's only used for treating the parasites is because it's like a worst case scenario situation. Right. Because if not dosed correctly, you can have long-term issues. Like it causes damage to the body.
Right.
In the long run. So that's why they don't want to use it. Not necessarily because it's just for horses, it's just for cows. Because I saw someone earlier post, they were posting about, it was the idea of like, well, we use ketamine and it's a horse tranquilizer. Well, that's actually not true because if you look that up, I mean, ketamine can be used for animals, There's a lot of medicines that
ketamine's
veterinarians use for animals.
Right.
But ketamine is actually not a horse tranquilizer.
No, it's given to knock people out for surgery.
Right. Now, they will use it on horses.
Sure.
And even badgers.
Well, let me tell you something about ketamine, and I can't get too far into the weeds on this, but I happen to have a case where ketamine was given accidentally instead of another medicine to a patient.
Yikes.
And immediately the person had to be put on the vent because it knocked them into that deep of a...
Jeez.
Right.
That sucks.
Right. And another thing about horse tranquilizers while we're on it is I had a case involving a person who thought they could safely dose horse tranquilizers because of a horrible back pain that they had. And they thought that if they would dose it, they were knowledgeable of giving this medicine to horses and the person ends up driving the wrong way down Interstate 71 in Jefferson County in Louisville and has a head-on collision with my client. And yeah, I mean, the case is long over.
Right.
But I'm telling you, when you mess with dosing and you have these medications that are for animals and you go to giving them and administering, could it work? Could it possibly?
Yeah.
But our system of medication and treatment is not based on could. It's based on more likely than not, is it going to be successful?
Yeah.
And that's when we start using it for the common good, is when we see it more likely than not working. That's the whole idea with our vaccinations. Is it going to prevent every case of COVID? No, it is not. There's no study that's going to prove that. More likely than not, is it going to keep you from getting COVID? Absolutely.
Right.
And that's why it was approved, you know.
Well, that's kind of the argument that I've made this entire time is like people who say, well, I'm not getting this vaccine because blah, 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 blah. And then I'll say, well, how many people have you ever known? How many people have you ever known who had diphtheria or polio or tuberculosis or what? I mean, I looked it up and there's about 20 different things that we're vaccinated for, you know, hepatitis, chickenpox, measles. I mean, I've known people who've gotten chickenpox. I've never known anyone to die of chickenpox. But of the 20 diseases I looked up that we're vaccinated for, I've only known meningitis is one of them. I've only known 3 of those that people have actually gotten, and none of them have died. But the rest of them, I've never known someone who had that affliction.
Right.
And it's because of vaccines.
That's right. Absolutely. You know,
so
and again, we've voiced our opinions about vaccinations on
right.
the show, and but it is this ivermectin thing in this case is really interesting, and I want to follow it. And before we leave, and have you heard any updates or anything? And I forgot to look at it before today, but I'll look at it before next podcast. Any updates on the Nirvana lawsuit? Anything? Have you seen anything else about that?
No, it's all, everything I've seen. I haven't read any updates in terms of the story, but everything I've seen, everyone seems to kind of feel the same way we do, that it's just a cash grab. The guys, you know, it wasn't a problem for the guy when he was making money off of it.
Right.
But I did read something where apparently, I guess, like his recently, and this could be hearsay, but I did read something that said recently he had this art show and he had invited all the previous band members from Nirvana, because I think like the art show had something to do with that, and none of them showed up. So what's being said is he got butthurt. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of spurred this into a thing where he's like, well, screw those guys. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, well, I'm going after them. Now, I mean, like that may not be true.
Okay. Well, but what we'll need to do, and we may have some news about this case anyway.
Right.
Okay. But that we heard about, but I don't want to even begin going down that trail until I'm sure. But we will pull to see what's happening in the court, in the actual court action, report back so everybody's up to date, because that's a real interesting lawsuit going on as well.
Oh, real quick, and this was an analogy Ed made earlier because I was talking to Davin, and it's about the ivermectin thing. So, some people, I have seen some people on social media say, well, why can't we at least give it a try? But and this goes back to when we were reading the story, and I said, this paragraph right here is what's key. And then we kind of delved into it, and that is it's used for parasites, intestinal parasites, and you're wanting to use it for a virus, a viral infection.
Right.
So my analogy is you say, I have the flu, and then someone says, you know what, you should use chemotherapy.
Right.
To get rid of the flu. It's like it knocks out cancer, right? So why wouldn't it knock out the flu? But let's be honest, cancer is not the same thing as the flu.
Right, sure.
So using ivermectin for COVID-19 is really no different than using chemotherapy to knock the flu out.
If you're going to use that logic, absolutely.
Right.
Okay. One thing that also is that, there is a whole different, there's a whole different science behind vaccinating than there is treating symptoms after the fact. Ivermectin is being given after the fact. This is a person that already has COVID-19. It's to somehow curb the effects of it or to help heal you.
Right.
We're not talking about vaccination science. We're talking about treating after coming into contact with it as a response to COVID-19.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head there. It's not even about the science. From everything I've seen, this whole ivermectin thing is being fueled by social media. And if there's one thing that we know, the people who are pushing all this information through social media are not friends of science nor common sense most of the time.
That's right. Exactly.
So
exactly.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys.
We'll have 2 listeners. The numbers are dwindling as we become more boisterous.
We'll still get that one person in Hawaii, though.
That's a loose promise.
Maui, here we come.
That's a loose promise. All right. This has been more Law Lite, brought to you by Foreman, Watson, Holtree. Check us out at fwhlegal.com. All of our platforms of social media are informative and have lots of information about the firm. Also, it makes it a lot easier to find the podcast. Thank you for listening, and until next time, have a great day.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery of a sham, of a mockery of a travesty of 2 mockeries of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free.
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth.